Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and my guest is Mike End, Milwaukee attorney who has the good and bad fortune of being honored as being president of our Trial Lawyers Association in Wisconsin for this year. And it proves to be a bigger job than usual right off the bat because after being on the job just a few days, the governor has come up with some legislation to pay back all of the corporate interests that got him elected. We started out with nursing homes, which is a concern that both you and I have, because almost every citizen better plan on being there someday. We had some protection in the law for these elderly and infirm people. And if the governor has his way with this legislation, it's being taken away. And proving abuse has always been difficult because usually your client is an elderly person, an infirm person who really can't document what happened to them. They end up with sores and fractures and illness and loss of weight and don't get their medicines, and sometimes they're abused by sadistic people. And about all we have to go on is what happens to them and what's documented in the records. But this new law is even going to take away that little arm, isn't it?
In my view, this is one of the worst aspects of this bill that's being proposed because in the past and up to today, if a person is injured in a nursing home, the person who is most knowledgeable about what happened to that person fills out what's called an incident report, and it's done right away and states, here's what happened. So the nurse may say, I was taking Mr. Smith down the hall and I dumped him out of his wheelchair. He landed on his head. Now he's in a coma and I just wasn't watching what I was doing. Well, that all gets written into the incident report, and we've always been able to get those reports once a lawsuit is filed. This bill that is being proposed states that incident reports are not discoverable, so that we will be unable to find out what that person wrote contemporaneously with the fact of what happened. And not only are the plaintiffs themselves unable to get it, the district attorney is unable to get this incident report for a criminal case. So not being allowed to get that injures the patient, who we may never find out what it is that caused that injury, and it's prohibiting or inhibiting the district attorney from successfully prosecuting criminal cases in those situations where criminal activity has taken place.
It really gives immunity to a corporate wrongdoer. If they gave Mr. N's medicine to Mr. Curtis, and it shouldn't have been given to Mr. Curtis, and so he goes in a coma. It used to be, at least when you had an honest attendant or employee, documented, and now it is just totally wiped out like it never happened.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And what right is left to the patient, the victim? Now, we can see that the insurance company benefits, and we have to remind people, in almost every case, we're talking about insurance because this is a risk of doing business, a risk that can be most easily assumed by the company, the nursing home in that particular case. And so this is a benefit to insurance companies, some of the major contributors.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So there are similar provisions in this bill that are doing nothing but making it more difficult for the injured people and are protecting the wrongdoers. And that's what this bill has in it.
Does the bill also affect medical malpractice?
Actually, what I just told you about, what we were discussing, applies to medical malpractice as well. So that in a hospital case, when the incident report is prepared, that's not discoverable by us, even in the hospital setting. If it's a criminal situation, the district attorney can't get that report either.
Well, I have many people who believe the insurance company propaganda, and it was espoused by one of the political parties in this last election all the time about a medical malpractice crisis, and there certainly is one. There are more moose sightings in Wisconsin than successful medical malpractice cases. The last statistics I saw, there are at least 20,000 bad results each year in Wisconsin. That is, people who go to a doctor or a hospital with one problem and come out with three. And in a good year, we have about 6 successful med-mal trials. What a crisis.
And actually, you're kind of understating the situation. There have been, well, going back to 1990, doctors at Harvard Law School did just an extensive study where they looked at 32,000 hospital charts in New York. They went through every chart and tried to determine how many patients were injured by medical negligence, and the number that they came up with was extrapolated to show that 98,000 Americans every year die in the hospital because of negligent care by healthcare providers. And they also, and there were 2 other studies similar to that were done. And just 2 months ago in the New England Journal of Medicine, there was an article where doctors tried to replicate the study that had been done back in 1990, and what they determined is that things have not changed one bit. There are 98,000 people in the country who are still dying every year, and over 1 million who are injured by medical negligence. So, and in Wisconsin, what that comes to numerically is there are, as you said, over 20,000 people every year who die or are injured by medical negligence. And last year, in 2009, the last year we have numbers for, in the entire state, with 22,000 people who died or were injured, there were 137 lawsuits filed in medical malpractice.
And when we do get to the juries are so brainwashed by this insurance propaganda, we lose 3 out of 4 of them, don't we?
Actually, it's worse.
Is it worse?
It is.
But the bottom line, because this is supposed to relate to jobs, and of course it doesn't relate to jobs, but the bottom line is doctors in this state pay less for medical malpractice insurance than 45 or 46 other states. It's pennies on $100 of service.
Actually, you're understating it again. In Wisconsin, and this is all documented, we have all of the information on what insurance companies charge doctors for medical malpractice coverage, and Wisconsin has the 3rd lowest in the entire country for internal medicine and for general surgery, and for obstetrics, we're the 2nd lowest. So we're the 49th state out of 50 in regard to OB.
And I'll bet the other one is Wyoming, that has more horses than people.
You know, well, interestingly, the lowest insurance premiums in the country are in Minnesota, our neighbor state, which has never, ever had any cap on damages. And they have the lowest premiums.
That is interesting. We have to take our second break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some other very frightening things about the governor's bill. We'll be right back.